episode of Spectator Sports. I'm your host, Sebastian Fonseca. We're doing it in a little bit of a different setting today. I'm actually in the middle of my 2-week trip to Europe. I was in Paris earlier this week, and now I'm filming actually from Amsterdam. I'm just outside the Ajax Stadium, and it's been a great trip so far, but that still hasn't stopped me from checking in with sports. I stayed up until 2 a.m. to follow the NFL draft. I followed some of the NBA games too going on. The time difference here is a little weird. It's 6 hours ahead of EST time. So definitely puts me through a little bit of the rigor, deciding whether to sleep or just can't watch the highlights the next day. But I couldn't miss the draft, that's for sure. And we have so much to talk about. Also, UCL action. We had the first leg of the semifinals this week as well. It was great to see some of these matches actually in bars in Europe. Even though PSG, which was the local team that was knocked out, there's still plenty of fans out in Europe watching both Man City and Real Madrid and Liverpool take on Villarreal. And we're all going to dive into that much later. So I'm going to start off with the NFL draft, and man, it was chaotic to say the least. The first 5 picks in the draft, as you all know, were defensive players, and that was the theme of this draft. Very lacking in quarterback prospects, and something we haven't really seen in recent drafts. The first quarterback actually going 20th overall. And the first 5 picks started off with the Jags taking Trayvon Walker, which was a bit of a head-scratcher in my opinion. I was definitely thinking Aiden Hutchinson was the more talented, ready-now prospect to really make an impact on that Jags team. Trayvon Walker definitely benefited from being on Georgia's defense, which won the national championship. I mean, countless players are going to be drafted, with a few being taken in the first round itself. He didn't really have a lot of production, and it's going to be really telling to see if he can generate that kind of pass rush coming off the edge as he was hoping he could do with Georgia, but we'll see. With the Detroit Lions taking Aiden Hutchinson, he just goes right down the road from his stay in Ann Arbor in Michigan to Detroit, and I think that's a great story. A local kid gets to stay home and really make an impact to his hometown team. Anytime you can get the best overall prospect not at number 1 is automatically a win, and obviously Detroit has really landed a stud with Aiden Hutchinson, and it's going to be exciting to see. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in that division with Aaron Rodgers there, Kirk Cousins, and even a young developing Justin Fields. You're going to need some play off the edge, and Aiden Hutchinson is definitely going to provide that as long as he stays healthy. The third pick was the first defensive back taken off the board, and that was Derek Stingley to Houston. He was highly touted for a while. He kind of dropped off due to an injury last year. He didn't really play in 2020, and the last true action that a lot of scouts are referring to was back in 2019, the national championship team. And if he can recreate that, obviously Houston can really benefit from that. They can go really any which way at number 3, I thought. So the best prospect at the time was certainly Derek Stingley or even Sauce Gardner, but they decided to go with Stingley. Sauce Gardner went at number 4 to the New York Jets, and I thought that was a home run. He's been most consistent DB in the draft prospects, in my opinion. So definitely a home run there, especially when defending guys like Stephon Diggs, now Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins. You're going to need cornerbacks there, and this is just a start for the Jets. Scheme-wise, it's going to fit in really well with their coach, and I'm really excited to see what he does in New York. The other New York team, the Giants, picked 5th overall, and they decided to go with Kayvon Thibodeau, who at one point was the top overall prospect, but his play, and depending on your opinion whether he really wanted to play NFL football, it kind of soured among scouts, and his stock dipped, and definitely is a bargain at 5, at least for value, but I would be more considering an offensive tackle. There was just so many good prospects. There were Ike Ekwonu, and then there was Evan Neal from Alabama, both really good picks. They decided to go with Evan Neal at 7, but I would have picked Ike Ekwonu at 5, and then pretty much you knew that with the Panthers at 6, they needed to get some O-line protection because they had one of the worst O-lines last year, that they would probably have to settle with the best prospect, and that really gift-wrapped Carolina the best tackle prospect in the draft. At 8 was the first receiver taken off the draft, and that was Drake London to Atlanta. And another head-scratching move, in my opinion. I thought that with so many other prospects, Jameson Williams is my best receiver, but with his ACL injury, I would say then Garrett Wilson. But the issue with Drake London is that, yes, he has a big frame, but he has issues with separating. And you already have a big red zone target with a guy like Kyle Pitts that they picked up last year, who is going to be a phenomenal tight end in this league. But I'm not really sure if that's the best fit. Obviously, though, with Mariota, it's a lot of moving parts. They're not going to win a lot of games, but we'll see what Drake London can do in Atlanta. Seattle took Cross at 9, and again, that's good value. They could really go either way. In my opinion, I would try to trade down and trade out of that spot and acquire more picks for the future. But still, staying at 9 was not a bad deal for them, considering with the pick that they just got for the Broncos in the Russell Wilson trade. So good value at 9. At 10, the Jets nabbed a weapon for Zach Wilson with Garrett Wilson. So we're going to have a Wilson to Wilson connection there. And I think that's the best prospect in terms of receivers that are in this 2022 draft. So a really good steal and really good utilization for the Jets, utilizing their 2 first-round picks, especially in the top 10. And then at 11, this is when all the trades start going. The Saints, we already talked about in the previous episode, made a trade with the Eagles to acquire the 16th and 19th picks, and now they used one of those packages to trade up to 11, and that's where they got Chris Olave. And that's a nice move and all, but considering that Tampa Bay is probably going to get this division title in 2022, I don't know why they really wanted to move up. Jameis Winston is still their quarterback, so I have a lot of questions there. I don't know what the real move is. Olave is definitely going to be a solid receiver, really, really good pick, but I don't really understand the move to get up there at 11 when maybe you could just get another receiver at 16, but who knows what's going to happen with the Saints. At 12, the Detroit Lions came up from 32 to 12, moving up 20 spots to pick up Jameson Williams, and I thought that was a really nice move. It's always a question mark whether a guy can come back from an ACL injury, but it's been different in recent years. I mean, the medical world has progressed so far that it's kind of become a very simple procedure, and people have been responding well post-treatment and surgery. So I think he'll be fine, and this is really going to help boost that Detroit Lion offense. They already have St. Brown already from last year, and he really picked it up within the last 8 games of the season, and this is a good compliment to him. It seems that Williams will be ready to go for training camp. At 13, the Eagles traded up with the Houston Texans to grab Jordan Davis, and some people in the fan base have been saying, oh, why not get Kyle Hamilton or somebody else? And this is just a typical Eagles move. The culture of this organization is that we build through the trenches, whether it's through the O-line or the D-line. And it's actually ironic because 10 years ago, they made a similar move to trade up to get Fletcher Cox. And I thought that this was a really nice move. Jordan Davis is such a freak athlete. He is 6'6", about 340 pounds, but he can move so quick. He has 4.8 speed, which is ridiculous for a guy that size. And he's just going to eat up so many blocks, command so much attention on the D-line, and it's going to free up a lot of people on the edge, whether it's Hassan Riddick or Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, whoever it may be. I think it's just a really nice pickup. Now, the Ravens were the team that was definitely concerning Philadelphia with taking Jordan Davis as well. So that's why Philly wanted to move up. But the Ravens had a win-win scenario, to be honest. They instead invested that 14th pick with Kyle Hamilton, and that Ravens defense is looking pretty scary. I mean, they've acquired Marcus Williams in free agency. They re-signed Calais Campbell, and they've made some really nice pickups in this offseason. And Marlon Humphrey is going to be back. Marcus Peters is going to be back. That defense is going to be very scary, and it's going to be a really nice thing to look out for in the season when they go up against the Cincinnati Bengals, where it's kind of strength for strength defense going against that highly potent Bengals offense. And at 18, this is probably the biggest firework that exploded in the first round, where the Eagles ended up trading their 18th pick and their third round pick for A.J. Brown, and truly a remarkable trade by Howie Roseman. As an Eagles fan, we've been missing out on receivers in the draft, and we were just wondering what they were going to do. There was receivers moving all around this offseason, whether it was Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams, and now A.J. Brown is coming to Philly. And they got him to a contract extension for 4 years at $100 million. It's a hefty price, but I'm sure in a few years this is going to look like a very bargain deal. So it's a great move, and with the 18th pick that they just traded to Tennessee, Tennessee picks up essentially a A.J. Brown replacement, and they got Treylon Burks out of Arkansas, and he's a really solid receiver too. Honestly, if Philly was there at 18, I would be happy with them taking Treylon Burks. So let's see what Tennessee can really do with the new receivers that they have. And then at 20, Kenny Pickett was the first QB to go off the board, and he's actually staying home in Pittsburgh to play for the Steelers. The Packers have continued to be very conservative in terms of picking good outside threats. I was thinking that they would be one of these teams trying to trade up to get a guy like Olave or Garrett Wilson. With that, they picked up a couple good defensive pieces, but it's a really big head-scratching move for, again, with them trading away Davante Adams without anybody else to really replace him in the first round. They decided to go defense and beef up the defense. The Chiefs moved up to 21, and they ended up picking Trent McDuffie out of Washington, and I think this is a really nice move. This was somebody that I wanted the Eagles to look into as well, given their needs at cornerback. But now that secondary is looking pretty nice for Kansas City, this will help out a defense that really was lacking a really strong cornerback in that secondary for last year. And then at 23, the Ravens actually acquired that pick by trading Hollywood Brown out to Arizona, and now Hollywood is now reunited with his college teammate Kyler Murray. So it's going to be exciting to see that matchup with him, DeAndre Hopkins hopefully coming back healthy, AJ Green just re-signed, and now it really just comes down to the Cardinals re-signing and extending Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray staying healthy and being able to replicate the early season success with the late season success, especially when it comes to December, January football. At 25, when they moved back, the Ravens ended up taking Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa, and I thought this was a great pick to walk out of the first round with Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum were chef's kiss. Big winners from the first round definitely has to go to the Baltimore Ravens. Going back to 23, they actually swapped picks. The Ravens taking Linderbaum at 25, so they gave out the 23rd that they just acquired from the Arizona Cardinals, and that was when Buffalo slid in at 23, and they picked up Kaiir Elam out of Florida, a cornerback. And this kind of goes with the kind of arms race with Kansas City that Buffalo's been creating. Ever since 2020, these two teams have been on collision courses in the postseason. They've been mirroring each other's moves, pretty much Buffalo giving all that Kansas City can handle. they've closed that gap, and Kansas City now has taken some steps back with losing Tyreek Hill. And Buffalo's really made another nice move acquiring a cornerback, so kudos to Buffalo. At 26, the Jets slid back into the first round and acquired Jermaine Johnson, a edge rusher out of Florida State. And with that haul of Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, and Garrett Wilson, Jets are big winners in this first round of the draft. They addressed both sides of the football. They got their quarterback a highly touted weapon, and it's just going to really work out now with Robert Saleh as coach, defensive-minded coach, mind you, with getting some really nice defensive talent. So the Jets are working on something, and it's going to be exciting in New York. And just to summarize again, I think the real winners of this first round were Baltimore, the Jets, the Eagles, even the Giants addressing both sides of the ball. The biggest thing is that each team addressed big needs that they had, and they utilized their multiple picks really efficiently, whether it was trading some future assets or picks in this draft. All of those teams that I just named have been big winners after day one of the draft. Some losers I wanted to name in this draft were the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Saints. 9 could have easily traded back, acquired some more assets, because it seems like next year will be that draft to get a quarterback. And they elected to stay at 9, pick a pretty solid O-line prospect with Cross, but I would definitely have tried to trade back for a team that really wanted a receiver and was willing to overpay for that by any means. The Packers, with their lack of drafting first-round wide receivers, continues in 2022. They picked up some good defensive talent, especially Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia, but it's still not quite enough. They need to really focus on the offensive side of the ball. Devontae Adams was really being the true number one receiver. He was targeted like crazy, really got the trust of Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know where Rodgers is really going to go with the football in 2022. Some day 2 action which transpired with the round 2 and round 3. The Ravens, and they picked up 2 defensive line prospects, one being Ojabo out of Michigan, who was definitely going to be a first-round talent. Let's not get that wrong. He unfortunately tore his Achilles on his pro day, and that's really tragic, and he's unfortunately lost a lot of money just being a second-round pick. But there's a winning culture there in Baltimore, and even if Ojabo has to redshirt his rookie year, he's going to learn a lot from guys like Calais Campbell, and next year they're going to be even more scary once Ajabo's ready to be healthy. They also picked up a defensive tackle out of UConn, and in them missing out on Jordan Davis in the first round, they were able to address that defensive tackle need that they wanted in the second round. So good job for Baltimore again. The other news in this draft was, again, like the quarterbacks. Not a lot of them have been picked early and often compared to other drafts. I think in 2020 there were, there was Trevor Lawrence, there was Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, at least 4 quarterbacks taken off in that draft. And in the first round in 2022, it's actually just one with Kenny Pickett. Malik Willis, a guy who is definitely considered to be a raw prospect, dropped all the way to the 3rd round by the Tennessee Titans. So they look like they're going to be looking into the future once Ryan Tannehill's contract runs out. And so happy for Malik Willis. He's going to sit back, learn from a very solid veteran quarterback, and they're going to be building something there in Tennessee. Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati, who guided Cincinnati to the college football playoffs for the first time in program history, was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. And it seems that Mariota will be that bridge quarterback, and another prospect where he's not really pushed to be starting day one. He's going to sit back, take some time, learn from another established veteran quarterback, and then take the reins when he's ready. And another quarterback, Matt Corral, was taken in the 3rd round, this time by the Carolina Panthers, and I thought it was another good pick. Corral has gotten a lot of praise for his arm, Unfortunately, suffered an injury at the last game of his college career for Ole Miss, but he's going to be sitting back behind Sam Darnold and not being rushed into playing. And I think it's another good pick for the Carolina Panthers. He's going to have some protection now with them picking up Ike Ekwonu. And next year, maybe when he's a start, they're going to have some good pieces around him. The first round of the NBA playoffs just came to an end, and it was a really crazy week tracking all the scores from here in Europe. But to start off, the Heat closed out the Hawks in 5 games. They really put the clamps on Trae Young. He finished the last 2 games of just 5 of 23 shooting and with a plethora of turnovers. The Hawks definitely took a step back from their Eastern Conference Finals appearance in 2021. So they're going to have to make some adjustments for the next year to really stay competitive out East. And this matchup sets up a second round series with the Philadelphia 76ers, who just beat the Toronto Raptors in 6 games. They were up 3-0 at the time of my last recording, and now they had a little bit of a midweek scare. They did lose that last home game to Toronto to stave off elimination, but you'd think that they would be able to close it out in 5 on their home floor, but they were actually blown out. And a lot of those demons started coming back. I mean, this team is coached by Doc Rivers, and he is the only coach, unfortunately, to blow 3-1 leads, and it would be just the icing on top if he was actually the coach to blow the first 3-0 lead in NBA history. But a little scare, but they pulled out just in time and didn't even get to a Game 7. The first half of Game 6 back in Toronto was very nip and tuck, but the Sixers finished that first half strong, which seems like Toronto was getting some really good contributions, especially from their bench. Chris Boucher ended up with 19 points in about 11 minutes off the bench. He just seems to be that Energizer bunny and really good player for them, but it just wasn't enough. They outscored the Raptors 70-36 in the second half, and that's your ball game right there. Especially on your home floor, you have to defend home court, and Toronto just did not come out with that same energy in the second half. Philly played desperate, and they really showed what they could really do. They got some good signs from James Harden. I mean, he dunked the ball for the first time I got to see in a while. And so it's nice to see that Harden can still get to the rack and has that lift. But the drawback with them winning by such a margin, you think that they should be able to rest their players. I mean, when your team is up by 20 points with about, 5 minutes left in the game, even in a playoff game, that's a pretty safe lead. And unfortunately, there was an incident where Joel Embiid actually took an elbow to the face from Pascal Siakam. It was inadvertent, but still, nonetheless, unfortunately for the Sixers, he suffered an orbital fracture, and that's going to mean he's going to be out indefinitely for the upcoming series against the Miami Heat, and that's definitely changed my original pick. I'm going to give my predictions for each series, and when I was doing my analysis for this, I really thought the Sixers, they're going to push the Heat really well, and I even picked them to win in 7 games against Miami. But now without that inside presence with Joel Embiid, it's really now up to James Harden, and he's definitely showed he's lost a step this year. And I don't think he's going to be able to carry the Sixers the way he has tried to carry the Rockets before. So I would say that it would definitely be a really scary thing if Embiid is not able to come back. I actually do a little bit of research too. There's this YouTube page operated by Dr. Brian Suterer, and I'm going to link his page. He's great. He analyzes all these sports medicine injuries, and he did a great breakdown video of Joel Embiid's orbital fracture. And it seems to me that or at least to him, that he's going to be out for at least the conference finals. So if he's not even going to be able to suit up for the series at all, despite maybe a surgery and then him playing with a mask, he's going to need some time to come back from that. So I'm picking the Miami Heat to win in 6 games. The other matchup in the East was the Nets taking on the Boston Celtics. At the time of the last recording, the Nets were down 0-2, and they actually were swept. And this is a huge, huge red flag on Kevin Durant's resume. We can say what you want, but he just didn't bring it for the first 3 games of the series. And in the 4th game, he did have 39, 6, and 6, but it was too little, too late. Not good enough. And he had such a brilliant roster out in Golden State, and I don't know what his deal was, and he decided to do his own thing, and it's just backfired every which way. He wanted to team up with Kyrie, and he unfortunately decided to end up with a teammate who, he's not always in basketball. Kyrie is a great talent. He's definitely one of the all-time greats, but the question is his availability. And Brian Windhorst brought up this excellent stat that he's averaged about 55 games per season in his career, which is basically about 75% of the time that he's played. So about a quarter of the season he's guaranteed to miss, whether it's injuries or even his choice, whether it be the vaccine stuff this year or whatever stuff he was going through last year, wanted to do last year. And they wanted Ben Simmons in return for James Harden, and then they originally traded James Harden to begin with. They lost pieces like Jared Allen and Karis LeVert. These are a lot of good pieces that they walked into a pretty talented roster that won actually 2 games against the Sixers in 2019 with D'Angelo Russell as their best player. And this year they got swept. And that's terrible, first of all. And they're going to have to do something off season. I don't know if Durant really wants to stay. I don't even know if Kyrie is going to return. He said he likes it in Brooklyn, but he said he was going to re-sign in Boston. So we just don't know. And if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, and after everything that Kyrie has put my franchise through, I would enforce team options, like a 1+1 deal that LeBron James used to do, at least when he was with Miami. He would sign a 2-year deal or 1 year with the player option to extend to the 2nd year. So he would always opt out and then re-sign for maybe a little bit more money to take advantage of each year's salary cap changing. And I think that the Brooklyn Nets should do that, but from a team option perspective, because you just don't know if he's going to be in there or not. And don't even get me started with Ben Simmons. He's been dealing with a lot. I'm not going to slight him for the mental health stuff. That's none of my business. But the vibes were that he was going to play in Game 4. And then when the Nets lost, that's kind of like obvious pressure for him to keep going. Because your season's on the line. And that was probably too much for Ben Simmons to handle. And he needs to focus on getting right up here mentally first before stepping on a court. And I just don't know if he really wants to be an NBA player. He's given all these God-given talents, but unfortunately he's just not been able to provide that or show the growth. He quit on LSU, he quit on the Sixers, and it looks like he's maybe quitting on the Nets already. So I don't know. But to go look forward to the Celtics, they've shown that they can really defend some of the most talented scorers in this league. And now with the Bucks dismantling the Chicago Bulls, we don't need to get into that. The Bulls were a train wreck. They dropped both games at home, and then they were blown out in Game 5. Really gentleman's sweep. The only thing for the Bucks is that they're now looking like Chris Middleton's going to be out for the entire conference semifinals. And with them missing about, let's say, 20 points a game, that's huge in the postseason. Yes, Grayson Allen has picked up the slack, and Bobby Portis has added some scoring as well, but they're gonna need to find more. I mean, Pat Connaughton can only do so much. Serge Ibaka's barely been playing 10 minutes, and now you're gonna ask him maybe play 15 minutes. That's a lot to ask for other role players that have been kind of more comfortable in their typical roles. And with that, as a Giannis fan, I would say with everything going on with the Bucks, I would say that Boston would win it in 7 games. The only reason why it even goes 7, maybe even 6, is basically because the greatness of Giannis. He's, in my opinion, the best player in the world right now. He's been doing it on both ends of the floor. Perennial MVP candidate, perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate, great leader, great guy. Was basically built from the rawest prospect that you could ever have into possibly an all-time great. And I would definitely say that with him at the leading the charge, of course the Bucks would be up there. Thankfully they still have Drew Holiday, but he's gonna have to pick it up a lot for them to have any chance in this series. But my prediction is in 7 games, the Celtics will get by and play the Miami Heat in the conference finals. Out west, the Pelicans, they pushed the Suns for a little bit. They even tied the series 2 games apiece. But when the series went back to Phoenix, they quickly reasserted dominance, putting New Orleans on the brink. It was definitely a close game in Game 6, but Chris Paul had the shooting game of shooting games. He did not miss a single basket, which was crazy. And even with a hobbled Devin Booker, who came back for Game 6, didn't really look like his true self, but he's just wanted to get his feet wet maybe before the conference semifinals. And they got through. So Phoenix is through to the second round, and they're going to be ended up playing the Dallas Mavericks. And Luka has come back into the lineup, and he seems to be just back into his exact same form that he was to close the regular season. The calf maybe has limited him slightly, but he's looking great. And this is now the end of, I think, the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell era in Salt Lake City. With the Dallas Mavericks now getting that monkey off their back, Luka getting by the first round for the first time in his career. He gets a little bit of rest before they end up playing Phoenix, and this is kind of like the new version of that Suns-Mavs rivalry back in the mid-2000s when Dirk went off against Nash for a few series, and those were some classic matchups as well. And I think with this, it's going to be really enticing, and with the injury to Devin Booker, I'm actually going to be taking the Dallas Mavericks to get by the Suns in 7 games, and that's my hottest take for this whole postseason run. The Mavericks seem to be adding in other pieces with Jalen Brunson now getting kind of that exposure to being the number 1 option, but now being able to take a step back and letting Luka run the offense. But they have pretty much one of their best ball handlers always on the floor, whether it be even Spencer Dinwiddie coming off the bench or Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic. So one of those three is always going to be on the court at some point in this game, so that's posed a lot of issues. Michael Bridges can only defend one of those guys, and then Devin Booker's hobbled. And I think if they really take advantage of putting DeAndre Ayton in pick and roll, it's going to pose some problem for Phoenix. I would definitely say, as a hot take, I'm going to pick Dallas to get by and go to the conference finals. The Warriors got by the Denver Nuggets, and it took a virtuoso performance from Nikola Jokic even to make this a 5-game series. I feel really bad for another wasted campaign for possibly the season MVP and possibly 2-time MVP. But only one player can get you so far in a series, and Steph Curry was reinserted into the starting lineup and seems to be back into form pre-injury. Jordan Poole did tail off on the last 2 games of that series, and we'll see if that continues in this conference semifinals, but it's definitely exciting to see Steph back to his old self. Even Klay Thompson too. He's showing that he can do both on both ends and still be a nice veteran piece and leadership. Draymond is back into Defensive Player of the Year mode. He's healthy, he's talking trash, playing physical. There was a great sequence where he just took Nikola Jokic, who probably has about 4 inches on him, and I'm not sure about the weight difference, but it's definitely a sizable amount of weight too, maybe 30 pounds to say the least. And he locked him up. He swiped at the ball, translated to an easy transition bucket on the other end. And if he's playing like that, it's going to be a big problem in the rest of the postseason. And the last postseason matchup was the Grizzlies and T-Wolves, and that series just finished off last night. And it was really exciting, both to some young teams going back and forth. Definitely shows some growing pains. The T-Wolves seem to have a lot of nice players around, but they just can't close out games, and that's something that they're going to learn how to do. Anthony Edwards seems to be like that budding superstar. Cat is well established. He just has to play consistently, but not quite there yet. And the Grizzlies got by in 6 games, and Ja has been showing and pulling Memphis into that next step kind of thing. That growth. They made their first playoff appearance last year, even taking the opening game against the top seeded Utah Jazz, getting by Steph Curry and the Warriors in the play-in game last year. So they've made progressive runs in each year, and I think that they are going to learn another harsh lesson, though. They have the tools to be a really talented group, and I think if it was any other team, possibly, that they would be able to get to the conference finals, and it's been a great year for Memphis. But with the Warriors, the thing is that they have veteran leadership. They have been there so many times. They were a dynasty for the best part of the last decade, and it took a couple years for them to get back into the playoffs, but that core is still there. They've been through so many hard battles. That team is finally healthy. They've acquired some new talent too, with Wiggins and Poole and Otto Porter off the bench, and their other role players too. But they are going to prove that really means something in the postseason. So I'm taking the Warriors in a very nip and tuck series, but it'll be the full 7 games. Last week was the first leg of the Champions League semifinals, and we had Villarreal take on Liverpool, and in the first half of that leg, Villarreal played quite admirably at the Anfield, frustrating Liverpool, and they actually were held scoreless, 0-0 at halftime. But as soon as halftime ended, I don't know what Klopp said to his men, but it worked. They got 2 quick goals right after halftime, and it was pretty much over from there. Villarreal would be happy to go out in the road leg of this stretch with maybe down 1 goal, but 2 goals seems to be too much even returning home. So it seems like Liverpool has the inside track to get to the UEFA Champions League final, and I would say so. They just seem to have too much talent, just too many good players for them, and it's been a great Cinderella run for Villarreal, but I think the road ends here. Manchester City hosted Real Madrid in their first leg matchup at the Etihad Stadium, and it was so fun to watch. 2 opening goals in the first 12 minutes or so. De Bruyne had a goal in the first minute or second minute. Gabriel Jesus was actually in form now. It's going to be very dangerous coming forward. With Benzema, that guy for Real just proved to be like he wouldn't go down swinging anytime soon. So they got a goal just before halftime. Foden came back with a goal, but then that was replicated on by Vicinius on the other end. So it was still 3-2. They got another goal from Silva to restore a 2-goal lead, but Benzema, after missing 2 penalties in their La Liga matchup, he banged one through, And with them being down only 1 goal back to the Bornabau, I would say advantage Real. They have had so many moments like this. They have veteran leadership, kind of like what the Warriors have in the NBA. Let's not forget that Real has been on a Champions League three-peat from 2016 to 2018, and it's been a while, yeah, but they've seemed to have been getting into form. They're going to probably run away with La Liga, and them getting by Chelsea and showing that kind of poise, even though the going got tough there. And now against City, City has had that kind of choker rep the last few years. They've choked some leads, they've choked some games, but we'll see what happens at that second leg. But I'm expecting Real Madrid to get through and they would go into the finals. And that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Thank you so much for joining. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and there'll be more episodes to come. But until then, I'll see you later.